Welcome to Chapter 8. In this chapter, we'll talk about different organizational designs, organizational structures that multinationals choose to support their strategic objectives. We'll also talk about how organizations control and coordinate their activities by different organizational designs. The organization's design will specify how the organization is structured along subunits and how those subunits are coordinated and controlled in order to accomplish the strategic goals of the organization. There is no one superior or optimal organizational structure. Organizational design must support the strategic objectives of the multinational, and every multinational might make different choices regarding its preferred organizational design. Very often, when organizations begin international activity, if it's through exporting, licensing, or foreign direct investment, which we discussed in Chapter 6, this also means that the organization has to restructure, reorganize to meet its new objectives. The important consideration is that the organizational design that's selected should permit sufficient flexibility for the multinational to respond to a changing environment. This is especially relevant in the global arena, where organizations are going to face global competition and many different societal environments. The two key questions that organizational leaders ask themselves when selecting a particular design for their organization is, how should the work be divided, and how will we coordinate and control the efforts of the different units? Division of labor refers to specialization. In small companies, employees might be doing lots of different things, but as organizations grow, work becomes more specialized and employees have more narrow job descriptions. The other aspect is coordination and control. Control can be either centralized, where decision-making happens at headquarters, or decentralized, where decision-making power is pushed down to the different subsidiaries. We'll talk about coordination and control more towards the end of this chapter. The organization can divide work into departments and divisions based on different criteria. One criteria can be functional area, the activity that each department or each division will engage in. For example, research and development, manufacturing, quality control, sales and marketing, and so on. Those are examples of functional areas, and many organizations will be divided along functional activities. A different way to divide the work is along product lines. Of course, products can be physical products as well as services or technology. Organizations that have many product lines might choose this way to organize their organizations along different product lines. A final way to divide the organization is by geographic area. Geographic area can be a particular country or a region of the world. Each way of organizing has its advantages and disadvantages. We'll look at some examples in the next slides. The first organizational design is according to functional areas. This functional structure is fairly simple. Departments perform separate business functions like research and development, production, sales and marketing, accounting and finance, and so on. Many small organizations have these functional structures, but large organizations might have functional subunits as well. This would work well if the firm has few products, operates in few locations, or has few types of customers, and when a company operates in a relatively stable environment with limited need for adaptation and change. Organizations choose the functional structure because it is efficient. There is high specialization within each functional area. Of course, with this division along functional areas, there's higher need for coordination. Because functional units are separated from each other, it's important to ensure that there is sufficient coordination across functional areas. The second approach that we discussed is along product lines. The product structure means that departments or subunits are built around a particular product or product group. This gives the organization the ability to focus on each product and respond more rapidly to relevant changes, for example, technological advancements. The functional tasks are duplicated for each product. This means that this organizational structure is less efficient, but easier to coordinate and control and respond quickly to customer needs. The third option is organizing departments or divisions around geographic areas. Again, the functional areas are duplicated like in the product structure, but it enables organizations to respond more rapidly and more easily identify customer needs in each region. To summarize the product or geographic-based structures, in each one of them, whether the organization is organized by product lines or product categories or geographic areas or regions, the functional areas are duplicated, which means economies of scale and efficiency are lost. But it allows the company to be more responsive to customer needs that might vary by region or product and identify much quicker and adapt products to customer needs. This is appropriate even for small organizations and may offer a competitive advantage. When we consider the interrelationship between organizational structure and internationalization, it's important to understand that internationalization will typically result in some form of organizational redesign. Of course, in the early stages of internationalization, there's very limited restructuring. We've talked about different entry modes in Chapter 6 and the different responses that organizations might engage in for the different stages of internationalization. In the early stages of internationalization, using exporting, whether it's passive, indirect, or direct, organizations will typically use export management companies or export trading companies, which means they don't really need to change their domestic organizational structure. Even when companies use licensing, once they have drawn up the agreement between themselves and the licensee, then they don't really need to adjust their organizational structure. When international sales become more important or grow in size, and organizations establish a foreign sales subsidiary or start manufacturing internationally, then the organization might need to respond in terms of redesigning or restructuring. When an organization begins its international activities through exporting, for example, it might put in place an export department that will sometimes be affiliated with domestic sales and marketing. Once the volume of sales becomes more significant and the company wants to move from indirect to direct exporting by establishing its own sales subsidiary in the foreign country, then a separate export department is going to need to be created in order to control the overseas sales force. A sales subsidiary is one type of foreign subsidiary. Any entity that the company owns or owns partially that is located in a different country for various functions, for example, sales or manufacturing or acquisition of raw materials, is considered a foreign subsidiary. Once foreign sales become more significant and the decision is made to produce or assemble near customers, multinationals need to invest through foreign direct investment in foreign subsidiaries. An international division might replace the foreign sales subsidiary when the organization decides to produce or assemble in a foreign location. The international division is going to be larger and have more significant responsibilities. It will be more extensively staffed, typically with people with international expertise. It is responsible for managing all aspects of foreign operations, including exports, international sales, negotiating contracts, whether it is with distributors or with licensees, and managing all foreign subsidiaries. This is usually the step once an export department has been established and sales grow in volume. The export department will be replaced by an international division. The international division is a fairly popular and effective structure for companies of moderate size with limited numbers of products or presence in a limited number of countries. Large multinationals don't typically use this structure if they have multiple products and operate in many countries. They might prefer different structures that we will look at in the next slides. When a company has multiple products, this might overwhelm the capabilities of the international division. Alternatively, if the company operates in many locations in different countries, it might be difficult for the international division to manage all of these regional or multi-domestic adaptations. We talked about these adaptations in the multi-domestic or regional strategies that we discussed in Chapter 6, which suggests that companies employing these strategies seek to be more locally responsive and adapt their product offerings to the needs and desires of the local customer base within a specific country in the multi-domestic approach, or within a particular group of countries in the regional approach. The international division might make it more difficult to implement international strategies using worldwide product or location advantages, which is more aligned with a transnational or international strategic orientation. As a result, organizations choose different structures, like the worldwide product structure, the worldwide geographic structure, the matrix, or the transnational network structure. We'll talk about that in the second part of this chapter.